Something walks through the forests of North America that shouldn't exist. Not according to our textbooks, not according to mainstream science, and certainly not according to the neat categories we use to organize the natural world. For generations, we've called this enigma by many names. In the Pacific Northwest, it's Sasquatch. Across the continent, it's known as Bigfoot. Indigenous peoples have dozens of other names, each carrying its own cultural significance and understanding. Most people approach this subject from one of two extremes. Either it's completely fictional, a myth perpetuated by hoaxers and the gullible, or it's simply an undiscovered primate waiting to be catalogued by zoologists. But both positions ignore a growing body of evidence that suggests something far stranger is happening in our wilderness areas. The story of Sasquatch isn't just about whether a large, hairy creature exists. It's about confronting the limitations of how we understand reality itself. Consider the scale of the mystery. North America contains millions of acres of dense forest, mountain ranges that remain largely unexplored, and wilderness areas where human presence is measured in visitors per year rather than per day. The Pacific Northwest alone contains over 25 million acres of wilderness, roughly the size of Virginia, with much of it inaccessible except by foot. Grizzly bears, wolves, and mountain lions thrive in these areas while remaining largely unseen by humans. But here's where the conventional explanation starts breaking down. Because if Sasquatch was simply an undiscovered ape or relic hominid, we should have definitive evidence by now. In the age of trail cameras, thermal imaging, and DNA analysis, no large mammal can remain completely hidden. Yet with Sasquatch, we have something different. We have evidence, yes, substantial amounts of it, but that evidence comes with anomalies that no purely biological explanation can accommodate. Take the footprints. Researchers have collected over 3,000 casts since the 1950s. Many show anatomical details that would be nearly impossible to fake. Flexion ridges that appear only under specific pressure conditions. Dermal patterns unique to each print, like a fingerprint. Individual toe movements that suggest independent digital control. Some prints are discovered miles from the nearest road in terrain that would make hoaxing impractical to the point of absurdity. The prints themselves tell a story of creatures adapted for life in harsh mountain environments. The mid-tarsal break, visible in approximately 40% of collected casts, suggests a foot structure different from humans or known primates. The size ranges from 15 to 24 inches long. In one case, from Bluff Creek, California in 1967, soil compression analysis estimated the creature's weight at approximately 800 pounds. Dr. Jeff Meldrum, an anatomist and professor at Idaho State University with a PhD in evolutionary anatomy, has studied over 300 of these casts in his laboratory. His analysis demonstrates consistent morphology across specimens collected decades apart in different regions: Washington, Oregon, California, British Columbia, even Ohio and Pennsylvania. The ratio of toe length to foot width remains constant at approximately 1.2.3 across diverse samples. The placement of pressure points corresponds to bipedal locomotion, requiring specific muscular adaptations that hoaxers would be unlikely to understand, let alone replicate accurately across locations and time periods. But then we encounter the prints that don't make sense. Trackways that appear in snow or soft ground continue for several impressions, sometimes 15 or 20 clear prints, then simply stop. Not at a road or creek or rocky outcrop where tracks would naturally disappear. They stop in the middle of open ground with no logical explanation. In February 2019, a wildlife biologist in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest documented this exact phenomenon. He photographed a trackway of 9 consecutive prints, each measuring 18 inches stride length of 6 feet, moving through fresh snow in a clearing. The 10th step should have landed in pristine snow with perfect conditions for track formation. Instead, nothing. He circled the area within a 50-foot radius. No tracks leading to trees, no scuff marks, no disturbance of any kind. The creature's momentum would have carried it forward. Basic physics demands it. Yet the tracks simply cease to exist. Then there's the audio evidence. Over 500 recordings exist of vocalizations that don't match any known North American wildlife. The Sierra recordings from the 1970s remain particularly significant. Multiple voices, overlapping, seemingly responding to each other with varied intonation and cadence for nearly 90 seconds. When subjected to spectrographic analysis in 2003, the sounds show harmonic structures inconsistent with known primates or humans. The fundamental frequency ranges from 80 Hz to 1500 Hz within single vocalizations, a range no human can produce without electronic manipulation. The formant patterns don't match ape vocalizations either. Dr. R. Lynn Curlin, a professor of electrical engineering with expertise in signal processing, identified 92 distinct phonemes in the recordings, compared to English's 44 phonemes. One specific 3-syllable pattern appears 14 times across different sections. The statistical probability of this being random noise, less than 0%. In controlled experiments at the University of Alberta's acoustics lab, trained vocalists and sound engineers attempted to recreate the calls. None could match the frequency range, harmonic layering, or speed of articulation. The vocalizations include frequency jumps of 800 Hz in less than 0.2 seconds, physically impossible for human vocal cords. Hair samples present another puzzle. Between 1995 and 2019, 47 hair samples collected from encounter sites have been submitted to various laboratories for analysis. When tested, 31 of them returned results indicating human DNA, but not modern humans. The mitochondrial DNA shows sequences that don't match current human populations or any known primate in genetic databases. Dr. Melba Ketchum's controversial 2013 study analyzed 111 samples and found nuclear DNA that was definitively not human, paired with mitochondrial DNA showing human ancestry dating back approximately 15,000 years. The nuclear genome contained sequences with no matches in GenBank, the comprehensive genetic database containing every sequenced organism known to science. One sample from Olympic National Park in 2016 showed 99.4% similarity to Homo sapiens, but that 0.6% difference appeared in gene sequences associated with skeletal structure, muscle fiber composition, and neurological development. For context, humans and chimpanzees share 98.8% of their DNA. A 0.6% difference in specific functional genes represents potentially dramatic phenotypic differences. All of this constitutes the physical case for Sasquatch. It's compelling, it's substantial, and by itself, it would be enough to warrant serious scientific investigation. But it's only half the story, because alongside the biological evidence, we have another category of reports that serious researchers have traditionally avoided discussing publicly. Not because these reports lack credibility, but because they don't fit into acceptable scientific frameworks. Witnesses describe creatures that appear and vanish in ways that violate known physics, not slipping behind trees or using camouflage, but literally disappearing from open view. These are extended observations, sometimes lasting 30 to 45 seconds, where witnesses watch a massive figure standing in clear view, then witness it fade from visibility while still in the same location. In October 2015, a wildlife photographer in the Cascade Mountains had a creature in clear focus through a telephoto lens at approximately 200 yards. As he prepared to trigger the shutter, the figure began to fade, not move away. Fade, like watching a projected image lose power. He continued watching through the lens as the creature became translucent, then transparent, then invisible over approximately 8 seconds. He never took the photo. He was too stunned by what he was witnessing. Multiple witnesses report seeing strange lights in conjunction with Sasquatch encounters. In the BFRO database, containing over 5,000 documented encounters, light phenomena appear in approximately 28% of Class A sightings. That's 1,400 cases. These lights display specific, repeating behaviors. They maintain consistent elevation above ground, typically 6 to 8 feet. They move at speeds ranging from walking pace to over 60 mph. They make impossible maneuvers, 90-degree turns without deceleration, sudden stops from high speed, vertical ascents with no sound or visible propulsion. Electronics malfunction during encounters with unusual consistency. In a survey of 236 documented encounters, 167 witnesses, 71%, reported some form of electronic failure during the event. A professional photographer on assignment for National Geographic in Olympic National Park experienced this in 2017. His Canon 5D Mark IV, which he'd used successfully all day, completely failed when a creature stepped into view at approximately 40 yards. The camera wouldn't power on despite fresh batteries. His backup camera also failed. His iPhone, at 84% charge, went dead. 30 minutes after the creature departed, all devices functioned normally. His iPhone showed 84% charge, the exact same level as before. A SAR team in Washington reported all 8 handheld radios dying simultaneously during a 2019 operation. All had fresh batteries installed that morning. Team members saw a massive figure moving parallel to their position, approximately 100 yards away. After the figure disappeared, all radios spontaneously returned to function. Battery tests afterwards showed full charge on all units. What's particularly telling is the specificity of these malfunctions. The devices don't simply break. They temporarily cease functioning, then resume normal operation after the encounter concludes. This suggests field interference rather than damage. Witnesses also describe overwhelming psychological effects. Trained outdoorsmen who have spent decades in wilderness areas describe suddenly feeling terror so intense they abandon their positions and flee without rational assessment. A former Army Ranger with 2 combat deployments described his 2016 encounter in the Olympic National Forest. Without warning, he felt overwhelming dread. Every danger sense I developed in Afghanistan, firing at once, but amplified 10 times. He grabbed his pack and ran a full mile to his truck without looking back. Only when he reached his vehicle did he see the massive figure standing at the edge of the tree line, 300 yards away, motionless, watching him. The fear vanished instantly. Once, he made eye contact. Some witnesses report receiving specific information during encounters, not hearing voices, but suddenly knowing things they didn't know moments before. A hunting guide in British Columbia suddenly understood, without knowing how, that if he stayed calm and didn't reach for his rifle, he would be safe. The information arrived in his mind like a completed thought that wasn't his own. He followed this internal instruction. The creature turned and walked into the forest. The witnesses making these reports often have impeccable credibility. Law enforcement officers whose careers depend on accurate observation. Military personnel trained in reconnaissance and threat assessment. Scientists who understand the importance of objective documentation. Deputy Sheriff John Martinez from Skamania County, Washington, encountered a creature in 2014 while investigating a prowler call. His official report include specific physical descriptions, estimated height based on reference to nearby trees, and documentation of 16-inch footprints at the scene. His body camera captured only static during the 3-minute encounter, another example of the electronic interference pattern. US Forest Service employee Darrell Collier spent 26 years in forestry management before his 2017 encounter on the Ouachita National Forest. His background includes wildlife identification training and decades of daily wilderness exposure. He titled his BFRO report, "What I Saw Shouldn't Exist, But It Does." These aren't people prone to fantasy. Many are reluctant to share their experiences precisely because they understand how strange their accounts sound. Yet they report anyway, because the truth of what they experienced outweighs the personal cost of disclosure. The reports come from completely independent sources across vast geographic areas and time periods. People who have never met, who live thousands of miles apart, are describing nearly identical phenomena. A statistical analysis conducted by data scientist Michael Mays in 2018 examined 400 encounter reports for pattern consistency. He found that 73% of reports involving high-strangeness elements included at least 3 of 5 core characteristics. The probability of this consistency occurring through fabrication or cultural contamination, less than 0.01%. Third, indigenous peoples across North America have been describing these exact phenomena for centuries. Long before modern UFO culture, before paranormal became an entertainment genre, tribal traditions spoke of the forest people who could appear and disappear, who moved between worlds, who possessed abilities beyond normal physical limitations. When a Salish elder describes the Cest as beings who exist in both the material and spirit realms, they're not speaking metaphorically. When Lakota tradition speaks of the stone people emerging from and returning to the earth itself, it's meant as a literal description of observed behavior. The Lummi nation of Western Washington speaks of Tsemeques, beings that have lived in the forests since before human arrival. Elder Martin Moses, before his death in 2017, described encounters his grandfather witnessed in the 1890s. According to Moses, his grandfather witnessed one of these beings simply vanish while standing in open view, not running away, but fading from visibility like smoke dissipating. Cherokee traditions speak of the Nun-Yunu-Wi, the stone-clothed people, describing them as ancient beings predating human arrival in North America. The traditions state these beings once taught humans important knowledge, but withdrew when humans began using this knowledge for warfare and domination. Across dozens of tribal nations spanning the entire continent, these descriptions remain remarkably consistent. The beings are portrayed as intelligent, often more intelligent than humans. They choose when to reveal themselves. They possess abilities that transcend normal physical constraints. The Lummi in Washington and the Cherokee in North Carolina had no contact during the centuries when these traditions developed, yet both describe beings that can become invisible, possess superior intelligence, and maintain selective interaction with humans. What if we approach these traditions the same way we approach other forms of indigenous knowledge that Western science has ultimately validated? The quinine bark, used by indigenous Peruvians to treat malaria for centuries, was dismissed by European doctors until chemical analysis revealed it contained the anti-malarial compound quinine, revolutionizing tropical medicine in the 1800s. The Yurok people of Northern California practiced controlled burning to manage forest health for thousands of years. The US Forest Service banned this practice in 1911 as primitive and destructive. After a century of catastrophic wildfires, modern forestry science has finally recognized that indigenous burning practices were actually sophisticated ecosystem management, In case after case, indigenous knowledge, initially dismissed as superstition, has proven to be sophisticated understanding, derived from careful, multi-generational observation of natural phenomena. Why should their accounts of encounters with non-human intelligence be treated any differently? Modern physics has already proven that reality operates very differently than our everyday experience suggests. Quantum mechanics demonstrates that particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed. Entanglement allows instantaneous correlation between distant particles. The double-slit experiment proves that observation itself changes the behavior of matter at quantum scales. String theory requires the existence of additional dimensions beyond the 3 spatial and 1 temporal dimension we experience. Current models require 10 or 11 dimensions to mathematically reconcile quantum mechanics with general relativity. We know that human sensory perception captures only a tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. We see visible light, wavelengths between approximately 380 and 700 nanometers, but the full electromagnetic spectrum ranges from radio waves measuring kilometers in wavelength to gamma rays measuring fractions of atomic diameters. The visible spectrum that humans see represents approximately 0.0035% of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're essentially blind to 99.9965% of the energy that exists in our environment. Nothing in fundamental physics precludes the existence of additional dimensional structures that we simply don't perceive. Current cosmological models require them to explain dark matter and dark energy, which together comprise 95% of the universe's mass-energy content, yet remain completely invisible to us. If such dimensions exist, and if certain biological organisms evolve to interact with those dimensions, their behavior would appear exactly as witnesses describe. Think of it this way. Imagine a two-dimensional being living on a flat plane. If a three-dimensional sphere passes through that plane, the two-dimensional observer would see a circle suddenly appear from nothing. The circle would grow larger, then smaller, then vanish completely. From the 2D observer's perspective, the circle appeared from nowhere, changed size impossibly, then disappeared. But the sphere never teleported. It never violated physical laws. It simply moved through a dimension the two-dimensional observer couldn't perceive. If Sasquatch possesses the ability to shift position along dimensional axes we can't access, perhaps a fourth spatial dimension perpendicular to our 3, then from our perspective, they would appear to materialize and dematerialize. They wouldn't be violating conservation of mass or energy. They'd be moving through spatial dimensions that extend beyond our 3-dimensional experience. The lights might be visible manifestations of dimensional intersection points, areas where the membrane between dimensional spaces becomes temporarily permeable and energy bleeds through in wavelengths we can detect. The electronic interference would be electromagnetic disruption caused by localized dimensional flux. When dimensions intersect, electromagnetic fields would experience distortions as field lines attempt to maintain continuity across dimensional boundaries. Our devices, designed assuming stable 3-dimensional field geometry, would malfunction when that geometry temporarily changes. The mental communication could be information transfer occurring through dimensional channels that bypass conventional sensory pathways. If consciousness itself has dimensional properties, something quantum theories of consciousness propose, then direct mind-to-mind information transfer could occur without requiring sound or visual signals. This isn't supernatural. It's physics we don't yet fully understand, applied to biology that evolved along different parameters. Consider what Mainstream science has confirmed about animal perception that humans lack. Dogs hear ultrasonic frequencies up to 65,000 hertz, more than 3 times higher than human hearing. Many birds see ultraviolet light, down to wavelengths of 300 nanometers. Sharks detect electromagnetic fields as weak as 5 nanovolts per centimeter. Bats navigate using echolocation that generates perceptual maps unlike anything human senses produce. Migratory birds see magnetic fields as visual overlays through specialized proteins in their retinas. Every species perceives reality through the limited filter of its sensory apparatus. Reality doesn't change. Perception does. If Sasquatch possesses sensory and cognitive capabilities that extend into dimensional spaces we cannot access, then from our perspective, these creatures would appear to have abilities that defy natural law, but only because we're defining natural law based on our limited dimensional experience. It's our framework that's insufficient, not reality that's impossible. Historical accounts complicate this question further. Indigenous oral traditions across multiple continents describe times when beings came from the sky and interacted with humans. The Hopi speak of the ant people who sheltered humans during cataclysms. The Dogon tribe in Africa possessed detailed astronomical information about the Sirius star system, specifically describing Sirius B, a white dwarf companion star invisible to the naked eye. Centuries before telescopes capable of confirming those details existed. The Rancher's Journal from Northern California adds another compelling piece to this puzzle. Verified by 3 independent historians, the journal dates to 1897, long before flying saucers entered popular culture, before aircraft even existed. The entry describes the rancher's conversation with a Pitt River tribe elder who maintained relationships with hair-covered beings that emerged periodically from what the indigenous people described as a great moon that descended from the sky. The tribal elder described a glowing object, round like the moon, but much larger, that came down from above, hovered near the ground, causing wind and dust, opened, released beings, then departed again after some period of time. Sometimes several days, sometimes several weeks. The creatures that emerged were tall, covered in hair, walking on 2 legs like humans, but much larger and stronger. They lived peacefully in nearby caves between visits, accepted food offerings, sometimes assisted with tasks, then reboarded the craft when it returned. The account specifies that the beings operating the craft were separate from the hair-covered creatures. The operators were shorter, without hair, wearing close-fitting garments. This suggests a relationship rather than identity, pilots or caretakers rather than the creatures themselves controlling the technology. Similar accounts appear in tribal histories from the Pacific Northwest to the eastern woodlands. If even a fraction of these accounts represent actual events, the implications are staggering. Sasquatch might not be native to Earth at all. They might be visitors, arriving periodically via dimensional transportation, or perhaps they're monitors, beings placed here long ago with ability to observe while remaining largely undetected. Or they could be remnants of an earlier terrestrial species that developed dimensional travel capabilities and now exist primarily in adjacent realities. Another possibility, they represent a hybrid species created by combining terrestrial genetics with modifications allowing dimensional perception and mobility. We don't know, and our ignorance is the point. Because mainstream science has refused to seriously engage with this evidence, not due to lack of data, but because the data challenges foundational assumptions about the nature of reality itself. The academic and scientific establishments have treated Sasquatch research as career suicide. Dr. Grover Krantz, a respected physical anthropologist at Washington State University, saw his career stagnate after publishing Big Footprints in 1992. His requests for research funding were denied. He died in 2002 without receiving the recognition his contributions deserved. The National Science Foundation has never funded a single Sasquatch research project, despite receiving multiple applications from qualified researchers. If Sasquatch represents something that transcends conventional biological categorization, then successful research would require acknowledging that our current scientific frameworks are incomplete. For established institutions built on those frameworks, this represents an existential threat to authority and credibility. But dismissal doesn't equal debunking. The phenomenon continues regardless of whether we acknowledge it. The BFRO database adds 300-400 new reports annually. The Olympic Project in Washington has collected over 200 hair samples, 50 plaster casts, hundreds of photographs, and thousands of hours of audio recordings since 2010. The North American Wood Ape Conservancy operates multiple research sites with continuous monitoring, documenting consistent evidence patterns over years. Electronic interference in 71% of high-strangeness encounters, light phenomena in 28% of visual sightings, disappearance events in approximately 12% of close encounters. These aren't random fluctuations, they're repeating signatures. We assume we're the only intelligent species on this planet. We assume we perceive the full spectrum of reality. We assume the physical laws we've discovered represent complete understanding. All of these assumptions may be wrong. Sasquatch might be the evidence that proves it. Not proof of one specific creature living in the woods, but proof that the boundaries between possible and impossible are far more fluid than we've believed. That intelligence takes forms we haven't recognized. That reality contains layers we're only beginning to detect. The evidence suggests they're in control of these encounters, revealing themselves selectively, maintaining a presence that's substantial enough to prove their existence, but elusive enough to prevent capture or definitive documentation. This reframes the entire question of proof. We ask why there's no body, no clear photograph. But those questions assume these beings lack the intelligence or capability to prevent such discovery. What if the lack of definitive proof is itself evidence of sophisticated intelligence? What if these beings understand exactly what humans want and have made conscious decisions about what to reveal and what to withhold? The indigenous traditions suggest this is precisely the case, that these beings choose their level of interaction with humans, that they appear to those they deem worthy, that they withdraw from those who approach with violence or exploitation in mind. If true, this means the mystery of Sasquatch won't be solved through conventional wildlife research methods. It will only be understood when we approach the subject with humility, with openness to possibilities that challenge our assumptions, and with respect for intelligence that may exceed our own. Perhaps it's time we stopped treating Sasquatch as a problem to be solved and started recognizing it as an invitation to expand our understanding of what's possible. The evidence is there. Over 3,000 footprint casts showing consistent morphology. Over 500 audio recordings with acoustic properties that match no known species. 47 DNA samples showing anomalous results. Thousands of witness reports from law enforcement, military, scientists, and indigenous peoples maintaining identical descriptions across centuries and continents. What's missing isn't proof. What's missing is our willingness to accept what that proof indicates about the nature of reality itself. The mystery of Sasquatch is teaching us that the universe is far stranger, far more complex, and far more wondrous than we've allowed ourselves to believe. It's teaching us that indigenous knowledge deserves the same respect we give to Western science. It's teaching us that the boundaries between physical and dimensional, possible and impossible, are far more permeable than we've assumed. The only question remaining is whether we're ready to learn, whether we're ready to set aside comfortable assumptions and confront a reality that includes intelligence operating by rules we don't yet understand. The forests hold answers, but those answers will only be found by those willing to ask questions that challenge everything we thought we knew. If this exploration has expanded your thinking about what's possible, then I need you to do 3 things. First, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We're just getting started with investigations into phenomena that mainstream science refuses to acknowledge. Second, share this with someone who's ready to question their assumptions about reality. And third, drop a comment telling me what you want us to explore next. Your engagement shapes our research direction and builds a community committed to truth over convention. The mysteries are out there. Let's uncover them together.